in front of the Château de Goutla with the chicken on the piano. Notre regard s'attarde avec émotion sur le château jusqu'à ce que ce dernier s'évanouisse dans le lointain. C'est pure magie que des hommes qui cultivent la terre et des hommes qui travaillent à l'usine aient pu ainsi se réunir, non seulement avec des juristes, artistes et peintres parmi les plus réputés de France, mais aussi avec moi, Duke Ellington, leur frère de cœur venu d'un autre pays, d'un autre continent, par-delà l'océan. And as a matter of fact, Ellington participated to the Concert des droits de l'homme in 70 for the UN, United Nations, to celebrate the 22nd anniversary of the Declaration of the Human Rights. The show My People in Chicago during the summer '63 to celebrate the centenary of Emancipation Proclamation by Abraham Lincoln. Here you can see him with Martin Luther King. And there was also Black, Brown and Beige, a tone parallel to the history of the Negro in America, created in '43 and played at the Carnegie Hall, the first long work to depict the evolution of the image of the Afro-American people. So, after these few words, here you can see also this picture. And it says, c'était pour l'exposition du centenaire, et on voit qu'en fait il montre à Martin Luther King la partition de My People. Ça c'est une partition aussi que j'ai trouvée au Smithsonian Institution. This is Black, Brown and Beige, recorded with Mahalia Jackson in '58. So after these few words, this roundtable is going to be firstly with Daniel Maximin. Maximin here is a poet, novelist and essayist born in Guadeloupe. He was first a professor of literature and anthropology, then he worked at France Culture and for the Ministry of Culture, and he organized 3 national events, like the 150th anniversary of the abolition of slavery in 1908, also the Year of Francophonie in 2006, and the Year of Overseas France in 2011. He is the author of, among other works, 3 novels, L'Isolé Soleil, Souffrière, and L'Île et une nuit, published at Éditions du Seuil. He has also written an autobiographical account, Tu sais l'enfance, in 2004, and an essay, Les fruits du cyclone, une géopoétique de la Caraïbe, et non pas géopolitique, in 2007, as well as a collection of poems, L'Invention des Désirades, and his latest published works are Écrits de dissidence de Suzanne César, and also Aimé Césaire, Frère Volcan. In December 2017, he was awarded le Grand Prix Hervé de Lyon by the Académie Française. These days, he's writing a novel involving jazz, music, and particularly Duke Ellington, so he's going to probably read an extract of that work that is not published yet. My dear Daniel, the floor is yours.
Merci Leïla. Je voudrais vous transporter le 9 mars 1942 à Paris, à loin d'ici, et vous lire un extrait du prochain roman que j'écris, dans lequel Duke Ellington et le jazz ont une place absolument centrale.
We are on March 9th, 42 in Paris. The novel takes place at this place. And Duke Ellington and jazz have a central place for his novel.
Pour deux raisons. La génération des jeunes colonisés de l'époque a choisi Duke Ellington comme symbole de la musique de résistance.
Because the young generation of the colonized people at this period choose Duke Ellington as a symbol of resistance.
Et d'émancipation. C'est-à-dire c'est la musique de la libération qui va venir. Libération contre le fascisme, contre le nazisme et contre le colonialisme.
It will be considered as a music of freedom, freedom of Europe after the war, but also freedom of colonialism.
Le roman donc se passe à cette époque et un des personnages, celui, parce qu'on va faire assez vite, vu l'heure, un des personnages est un professeur de musique qui donne des cours de jazz à 5 jeunes en 1941-42, pendant l'occupation allemande à Paris et la violence, évidemment, de l'oppression nazie.
One of the characters is a music teacher who gives courses in Paris, jazz courses in Paris, during the occupation of the 90s.
Et un de ses élèves fait de la résistance, est arrêté, est condamné à mort et exécuté au Mont Valérien le 9 mars 1942 à 4 heures de l'après-midi.
One of his students is a resistant and he has been caught by the Nazis and he's been executed at the Mont Valérien in March 9th, 1942.
Ce professeur avait affiché dans la salle où il faisait les cours pour les 5 jeunes qui sont mineurs, ils ont 19 ans, tous, un décret, le décret de Goebbels, le ministre de la Culture de Hitler, qui avait, étant donné l'importance et le fait qu'il ne pouvait pas empêcher l'existence du jazz, notamment chez les jeunes, alors c'était interdit comme musique judéo-nègre, musique de sauvage, eh bien, il avait fait un décret que je vais vous lire.
So the teacher had to put on the wall the decree which was a décret, ça va? The law, merci. The law which has been pronounced by Goebbels, the Minister of Culture of the Nazis, claiming that jazz music is Jewish and Negro music and it was absolutely forbidden in France.
Comme on ne pouvait pas tuer le jazz dans les camps, on a inventé un jazz supportable par le nazisme.
So as we couldn't kill jazz in the concentration camp, we invented a jazz which could be barely acceptable for the Nazis.
Et donc le décret qui est donc dans la salle où travaillent ces jeunes pour qu'ils voient à quel point c'est une profonde résistance, le décret de Goebbels, je répète, ministre de Hitler de la Culture, disait ceci. La préférence doit être donnée au mode majeur et aux paroles exprimant la joie de vivre plutôt qu'au texte judaïquement lugubre.
We must prefer the major modes and the joyful text.
Quant au tempo, la préférence sera donnée aux compositions rapides au détriment des slow et des blues.
As for the tempo, there will be fast music instead of slow and blues.
Néanmoins, le tempo ne doit pas excéder l'allegro pour rester conforme au sens arien de la discipline et de la modération.
Meanwhile, the tempo must be close to allegro, which is close to the Aryan aspect.
En aucun cas, les excès négroïdes dans le tempo, appelé hot jazz, ou les performances solo, appelées breaks, ne seront permis.
Are prohibited the negroid aspects of the music and the breaks.
Les compositions de jazz doivent comporter au maximum 10% de parties syncopées.
The composition must only have 10% of syncopated music.
Le reste doit suivre un mouvement legato naturel
The rest must follow a natural legato movement
qui sera dépourvu des rythmiques inversées, ce qu'on appelle les riffs,
with no inverted rhythmic motifs, which are called riffs.
riffs caractéristiques des races barbares et favorables aux sombres instincts étrangers au peuple allemand.
Which are considered as the barbarian aspect of the people we are non-German.
Je vous ai lu ce décret officiel, à la suite de quoi les nazis ont fait un orchestre officiel, Charlie, pour passer sur les radios, puisque tout le monde aimait le jazz.
Based on this text, the Nazis created an orchestra, Charlie, who was played on the radio because everybody loves jazz.
La scène que je vous propose se passe donc le lundi 9 mars. Le professeur est déprimé de savoir que son élève va être fusillé dans l'après-midi. Il a presque une envie de suicide et il décide d'aller pas loin d'ici, rue Chaptal, au Hot Club dont il est un des membres, il est un musicien, il joue du violon, pour pouvoir supporter l'attente de l'exécution.
Okay, here is the text, but I won't translate the text because now, but of course, but just for ending, the professor is absolutely depressed because his student will be executed by the Germans. And for changing his mind, he goes close from here, Rue Chaptal, in the quarter of Pigalle, at the headquarters of the Jazz Hut, because he also is a jazz musician. Now,
Et j'ai déjà un mot, il dialogue avec Charles Delaunay. Charles Delaunay le reçoit, essaie de le consoler, et il va le consoler en lui disant « Je vais te faire écouter 5 ou 6 disques de Duke Ellington qui doivent te donner la soif de vivre et de revivre malgré la mort. »
And Charles Delaunay tries to consolate the professor by letting him hear some records of Duke Ellington for giving him the feeling of hope after this depressive situation.
Donc, 9 mars, 13h, 1982. Ariel avait décidé d'aller se réfugier au Hot Club de la rue Chaptal en espérant que son grand ami Charles Delaunay serait présent et saurait partager avec lui l'attente de l'exécution. Pour l'heure, Charles se trouvait dans la cave aménagée du Hot Club. Je rappelle juste que le Hot Club était un lieu de résistance qui accueillait les aviateurs allemands, anglais qui étaient tombés pour les ramener en Angleterre. Et il y a eu des arrestations, dont celle de Charles Delaunay et d'une de ses assistantes, à ce moment-là.
We recall that the Hot Club de France, Rue Chaptal, was a place where resistance had an activity, and they protected some British pilots who felt, and they
Les aviateurs allemands.
Les aviateurs anglais.
Anglais, pardon.
Yes, and Charles Delaunay had issues.
Il a été arrêté, et ainsi que son assistante, qui elle est partie en camp de concentration.
Charles Delaunay has been arrested, but he didn't die, and his assistant, her assistant, was deported, and she died in a camp.
C'est juste pour dire la puissance de la musique, c'est-à-dire de la vie, contre toutes les forces de mort. Delaunay accueillit avec grand plaisir cette arrivée surprise d'Ariel, qu'il n'espérait pas revoir de sitôt. Il avait précédemment contribué aux efforts vains de sa sœur, qui avait tenté en décembre d'organiser avec le milieu des musiciens la fuite du jeune étudiant en zone sud. Ami Ariel, pardon d'avoir cassé ton oreille absolue parce qu'il s'entraînait à la batterie dans la cave. Pour te faire constater mes progrès d'enfant de la batterie. En plus, tu arrives à point pour partager cette magnifique nouvelle que j'ai reçue la semaine dernière. Duke Ellington a recruté un super violoniste pour son orchestre, un jeune nommé Reynolds, qui en plus du violon, sait tout faire, paraît-il. Trompeter, chanter et même danser. Je suppose qu'il va amener avec tout ça une dose supplémentaire de fantaisie dans l'orchestre. Et j'estime donc qu'il nous faudra fêter ici même chez nous, au Chaptal, cette arrivée royale du violon dans le plus grand orchestre de jazz, car je suis absolument certain que nous y sommes pour beaucoup. Tu te souviens de notre inauguration du Hot Club en avril 1939, avec Duke en invité d'honneur, après son deuxième concert du mardi à Chaillot. Tout le pavillon de la cave au grenier et toute la rue Chaptal étaient noirs et blancs de monde et de musiciens. Tu te rappelles, nous avions voulu éblouir notre parrain Duke, ses musiciens, et surtout Irving Mills, son impresario, avec l'opale de notre quintette du Hot Club, dans le but aussi de lui suggérer fortement une première tournée aux États-Unis. Malheureusement, c'est l'inauguration de la guerre qui a plutôt suivi. Mais ce soir-là, Duke, il a été subjugué par la guitare de Django et les prestations de nos trois mousquetaires violonistes, Stéphane Grappelli, Michel Warlop et toi, Ariel Bergobson. Eh bien, je suis sûr et certain que c'est en vous écoutant qu'il lui est venu l'idée d'ajouter au retour un violoniste à son grand orchestre qui regorge de cuivre et de clarinette. Tu vois, Ariel, je pense que tu peux déjà te préparer à une tournée américaine triomphale demain, après la paix. Charles, mon ami, répond. Qui sait où nous serons demain? Qui sait où je serai? Qui sait si je serai? Après la paix, comme tu dis. Pour aujourd'hui, tout ce que je sais, c'est que mon petit violoniste, Tony Blancourt et ses 6 camarades, condamnés à mort vendredi, n'y seront pas demain. Ils vont être fusillés tous les 7 au Mont-Valérien, aujourd'hui même à 4 heures cet après-midi. À l'annonce brutale de cette nouvelle, Charles resta muet, d'autant plus que jamais Ariel l'avait évoqué auparavant avec lui, le sort de Tony. Charles avait écouté toutes les confidences d'Ariel avec stupéfaction, découvrant à quel point, depuis son retour d'Espagne, où il avait été blessé et devenu aveugle, un grand doute humain traversait le cœur de son ami, malgré ses remarquables qualités de violoniste de jazz. Devant ce récit de son ami, dont il croyait la résistance humaine fermement reliée à ses puissantes capacités de jazzman, Charles réalisa qu'en guise de soutien à la remontée du trou noir dans lequel Ariel avait voulu plonger tout à l'heure, l'unique remède serait de laisser la musique leur imposer sa puissance et sa vitalité. Pour lui, c'était l'heure très juste pour laisser les notes du jazz attaquer la mort à cet instant, à coups d'improvisation crue, surmontant le malheur hors des confins de tombeau et dérouler leur swing rebelle à couleur de blues vert. Et c'est alors que lui fait l'idée de passer tout le temps de l'attente de l'exécution à faire Ariel écouter un choix bien choisi parmi les disques d'Ellington de sa riche collection. Mon cher Beckhoff, installe-toi bien mieux dans le fauteuil avec ton beau violon sur tes genoux. Il est temps que je fasse ton portrait avant ton prochain séjour définitif au cimetière. Et en même temps que je te dessine, je vais te traduire le message à suivre de notre grand Duke avec le pot pourri de ses titres que je te propose et qui te rappellera pourquoi il faut de jazzmen comme lui et toi dans ces temps de détresse. Oui, Ariel, je t'annonce que loin de désespérer, notre jazz, qui est aussi ton jazz, conforte ton courage de continuer de plus belle ton combat, musique, sur les paroles de ces poèmes. It don't mean a thing sans cela. Charles commença alors à dérouler pour Ariel son choix parmi son grand lot de disques d'Ellington, en lui traduisant, avec une pointe d'humour, la leçon à bien suivre des titres en anglais au fil des morceaux avant de tout écouter à la suite et dans cet ordre sans plus échanger aucune parole superflue.
So here is a lesson based on the Duke's titles of the songs.
Ouvre bien ton oreille absolue, car notre Ellington, le dieu des vents, des cuivres, des cordes et des bois, va livrer bataille à son rythme avec son choix de morceaux pour terrasser ta peine de la mort. Tu vas commencer par Take the A-Train, le générique de début de ces concerts, pour remonter sans tes lunettes la pente depuis ce matin noir, Misty Morning, en caravane jusqu'aux étoiles, Stardust, à hauteur de la lune, How High the Moon, en bravant l'orage, The Stormy Weather, loin des échos de la jungle nazie, Echoes of the Jungle, jusqu'à ton rêve enfin bien réveillé, Daydream, hors de ta solitude, avec ton chant d'amour créole, Love Call, pour annoncer un monde nouveau, New World is coming, tourné vers la lumière, beginning to see the light, au rythme de son swing, judéo-nègre, libérateur et barbare. Et d'ailleurs, souviens-toi encore de la dédicace que Duke avait faite en 1939, ici même, au petit violoniste qui était accouru depuis Berlin pour écouter son concert interdit en Allemagne. For Michael, it don't mean a swing if it ain't got that sing, freedom. Et puis, souvenons-nous, plutôt à cette heure, Ariel, de ton fier credo musical affiché sur ta porte à côté du décret de Goebbels, pour les élèves de ton cours de jazz, et que je ne te laisserai jamais arracher. Jazz, même en cage, seul chant d'oiseau qui délivre les barreaux.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful, and we can wait to read the published book.
When will be
Okay, beginning of the coming year. And so now we are going to have a duo between John Edward Hasse and Laurent Mignard. So as Laurent presented John in French this morning, I'm going to say a few words in English, if you want. So he did, of course, a huge work as a curator at the Smithsonian Institution, where he was for 33 years. He has published a major book about Duke Ellington that everybody must read, beyond category. And I'm going to make it short, but he lately did a great work also about ragtime. And he's a wonderful lecturer, as you could see earlier this morning, and about with many talents. And he received 2 honorary doctorates, and 2 ASCAP awards for excellence in writing and music. I'm sure he's got some fantastic stories concerning Ellington's vision of human rights and philosophic matters, and he's going to do this duet with Laurent Mignard, and I'm going to tell a few words about Laurent Mignard too. Conductor, composer, arranger, trumpeter, Laurent Mignard founded the Duke Orchestra in 2003. With 7 albums and a large number of TV and radio recordings, the Duke Orchestra is today considered to be one of the best ambassadors of the work and values of Ellington. And he's the winner of the 2002 La Défense competition, 2005 Jazz Ronde Revelation, and first prize for instrumental jazz. He's now the president of our Maison du Duke. And he's got a lot of many secrets too. I won't unveil the plot. And so, Prez and John, the floor is yours.
All right. Perhaps I could start. The thematic of today is about the Enlightenment. Les Lumières. On va pas faire un cours sur les Lumières, mais on a tous une petite idée de quoi il s'agit about the Enlightenment. We know that in the 18th century, it will be very, very soon related to close. On sait qu'au XVIIIe siècle, ce sont donc des penseurs qui ont mis en avant les valeurs de tolérance, de liberté et d'égalité. In the 18th century, they were talking about tolerance, freedom, and equality. So, based on this point, there's something interesting when I tried to read a few about this subject, is that we don't have the same signification about the Enlightenment here in Europe and mostly in France than in the US. Because for us in Europe, especially in France, pour nous en France, le principe des Lumières est que les Lumières viennent de soi-même. The light comes from ourselves, like a deep work on ourselves. But in the US and the Anglo-Saxon area, donc dans le monde anglo-saxon, les lumières en fait proviennent d'une illumination qui provient de l'extérieur. It's an enlightenment from the outside. So it is very different. Once again, the acceptance of l'acceptation de ce mot. I would say also that, and I always talk about this to everybody. Quand les gens me parlent de la liberté, when they talk about freedom, we don't have the same conception of liberty, of freedom, de la liberté ici en France et aux États-Unis. En France, la liberté the freedom is based on the feeling of fraternity. But in the US, if I know well, the freedom, especially in the Constitution, is based of it is a freedom for me to do what I want. Which is not exactly the same. He explained capitalism, and he also explained some aspects of the esclavagism. Slavery, pardon. It explains also some aspects of it. So I would not say that our approach is better, of course. But I would expect that it's different aspects of culture. So just for ending this aspect, le plus grand apport de cette histoire des Lumières, what they brought us, the thinkers of the Enlightenment, is about coming back to les nouveaux droits naturels, the new natural rights of the people, which were not divine rights, but how the people could conquest what they call natural rights. Oh, and also, this is based on a system of value, a system de valeurs. Et perhaps we could just stay 1 minute, peut-être qu'on peut rester 1 minute sur cette histoire de valeurs. Il y a 3 types de valeurs, three types of values. Il y a les valeurs humaines, the human values. Les valeurs humaines qui sont des valeurs sociales pour vivre ensemble et qui vont faire que, par exemple, l'acceptation, la bienveillance, la coopération, l'entraide, the goodwillness, the acceptation, the cooperation, the respect, the solidarity. These are human values. And these values come to the moral values. They come to les valeurs morales. Hein. And there is a second aspect of the values qui sont les valeurs éthiques, the ethic values, which are quite different. Et les valeurs éthiques, they are based on, elles sont construites sur le bien et le mal, the good and the bad, which is very different. And then, les valeurs éthiques vont définir ce que nous sommes et elles vont englober les valeurs de dignité, de justice, de considération, dignity, justice, consideration, and all these are ethic values. And we find these ethic values, ces valeurs éthiques, dans the living, dans le vivant, the human beings, the planets, the animals, the vegetables, and what we are living today, the ethic values. Today we are in the saving the planet, which are ethic values, which are not moral values. Et pour finir, les valeurs morales, ce sont des valeurs externes. Moral values are external values which are imposed by une société, un État, une religion, des lois, a religion, a state, laws, a society. Those values are moral values. And those values are very important because they are different, elles sont différentes selon les pays, les religions, les cultures. They're different in the countries, the cultures, and the religions. So these three aspects of the values are very interesting because elles ne s'imposent pas. They are not for the people by themselves. We conquer these values. On va les rechercher, ces valeurs. Chacun, each other will go to these values. So now the question could be, what are the values of Duke? Because how Duke is related to this, because we have the feeling that Duke Ellington is not very far from the values of the Enlightenment. What do you think?
I certainly agree, Laurent. And you have a wonderful list of values. I think you should go through them.
No. Very good. You mean no. Those values, the one you have. Okay, great. You sure you don't want to? Okay. I would not say, je dirais pas les valeurs de Duke. I would say how Duke is related to the values, or to à quoi Duke est relié, to what Duke is related. I would say les parents, the parents, are very strongly important for Duke. Dieu, God. La rue, the street, the people. L'ambition, ambition. L'observation, observation. Fuir les conflits, to flee the conflicts. L'innovation, la sérendipité, innovation. Savoir dire non, sometimes know how to say no. Construire à partir de l'autre, build from each other. Les superstitions et les phobies, superstition and phobias, which are definitely not the values of Enlightenment. We know that. Le travail, work. Elegancy, the beautiful, l'élégance, le beau. Le besoin de plaire, the need to please people, and especially women. La famille, which is la famille, the family, which is for Duke, the orchestra. L'humour, humor. Les racines, the roots, the people, the black people. L'Amérique, America. And for ending, God, back, Dieu. So this, for me, and there are many more, but for me, these are à quoi Duke est profondément relié. So what do you say of all these, John?
I think it's a brilliant list, and I would just add that I think he had a lifelong drive for excellence. He valued excellence, and he worked tirelessly to achieve it. He said he composed just about every day of his adult life, and when he didn't have music manuscript paper, he would take the back of a hotel letterhead, or even write on the back of a matchbook cover, write some notes. And we have at the Smithsonian many examples of that. A line of music here, a line of music there. He was bursting with creativity. I think that's another value.
John rajouterait les valeurs d'excellence.
And I'd like to talk a little bit about his values as a leader, his leadership values. One of Ellington's artistic masterstrokes was his keen insight on the value of diversity. He understood that difference among people is not only good and valuable, but almost sacred. He actively sought out difference in the musicians he hired, affirmed, cultivated it, and celebrated it.
Les valeurs donc maintenant professionnelles et de leadership d'Ellington, la première c'est l'affirmation de la diversité pour lui, mais également dans le recrutement et dans le fait que dans son orchestre, on ne veut pas avoir qu'une seule tête, mais au contraire, on veut un contraste de caractère et de personnalité.
As we all know, he didn't want a band of sound-alikes. He wanted a group of totally individualistic voices.
Absolument.
And that's what he got. Everybody in his band had a distinctive voice, and he was an alchemist. He would take their distinctive voices and create a new sound that wasn't possible before.
Chacun était encouragé dans son orchestre à aller au bout de lui-même, au bout de sa compétence, au bout de sa personnalité. Et c'est avec ça que Duke construisait son orchestre.
Imagine what a different world we'd live in if all our business, political, and organizational leaders realized what Duke Ellington knew, that each of us has been given special gifts, that we all need to find a way to highlight each person's gifts, downplay their weaknesses, enhance their strengths, and bring out their very best. That's a powerful leadership lesson and a value from Duke Ellington.
L'encouragement à donner à chacun, et la chance et l'encouragement à donner à chacun le meilleur de lui-même, mais au-delà de ce que pouvait même imaginer.
I also think Ellington, as a leader, valued listening closely. He valued listening keenly and with sympathy or empathy. He wasn't listening for the inevitable shortcomings or mistakes in his players' playing. He was listening for the beauty in Johnny Hodges' saxophone, for the brilliance in Cootie Williams' trumpet, for the humor in Ray Mance's violin playing. He was listening for those things, and that's what he got.
Le deuxième point central, c'est l'écoute profonde, l'écoute intime, l'écoute au plus proche de l'empathie. Il écoutait non pas le défaut de ses musiciens pour les corriger, mais il écoutait les qualités de ses musiciens. Il écoutait le son de velours et construisait sur le son de velours de Johnny Hodges, la trompette sauvage et brillante de Cootie Williams, l'humour et le talent incomparable de Ray Nance. C'est sur les qualités des gens qu'il construisait, en les écoutant et en identifiant, plutôt qu'en essayant de composer les défauts des gens.
It's a kindness to listen closely to someone else. You're giving them a gift. And Duke Ellington gave his players a gift by listening very closely to each of them. And by listening for the greatness in each musician, Maestro Ellington was inspiring his players to fulfill his lofty expectations of them.
Et l'écoute attentive est en elle-même un acte de générosité, puisqu'on le ressent quand on est écouté. Et par l'écoute attentive, il contribuait à faire que ces musiciens puissent déployer leurs ailes.
I think he highlighted as much as any American musician the value of the individual. By the time he was 30, he had developed a unique composing voice and style built around the distinctive voices of each individual band member.
Le troisième aspect, c'est le fait de trouver son propre son, son propre chemin, et de le trouver par soi-même. Et donc il le faisait pour lui-même, il encourageait ses musiciens à le faire.
He himself was, of course, highly individualistic in his piano playing, in his composing, in his clothing, in his overall style, and his use of language.
Et lui-même ne cherchait pas à ressembler à quelqu'un d'autre, il cherchait la façon la plus singulière possible pour jouer le piano.
He was so unique, so one of a kind, that I like to say that after God created Duke Ellington, he threw the cookie cutter on the ground, stomped it to smithereens. There will never be another Duke Ellington.
Who said this?
I do.
Oh, you do. John dit qu'une fois que Dieu a créé Duke Ellington, il a cassé le moule pour qu'il n'y en ait plus d'autres.
And Louis Belson, his drummer, who was a very good Catholic, used to tell this story. One day the Pope dies and goes to heaven. He's met at the pearly gates by St. Peter, who says, "Welcome, Holy Father. We've been expecting you. We've selected your dwelling. You go 3 streets to the left, you take the first right, and it's the 4th bungalow on the left-hand side of the road." "Fine," says the Pope, "but that great big mansion on the hill with the palm trees and the fancy cars, who lives there?" "Oh, that," says St. Peter, "that's where we put Duke Ellington." "Ellington," says the Pope, but I'm the Pope." "That's right," says St. Peter, "but we've got lots of popes. There's only one Duke Ellington."
Vous voulez traduire? Non, ça va, tout le monde a compris la blague? Allez, on y va.
Okay. I think Ellington also valued remaining fresh and innovation and remaining fresh with his players. He was curious about exploring new avenues. He was motivated to try out new ideas. He wanted to be different, or simply had to be different, to differentiate himself and his band from all the others. He had a commitment to excellence. He was brave and willing to take risks on the bandstand, night after night after night. He was not self-censoring. If he had inner voices that said, "No, you shouldn't try that idea, you could fail, you could embarrass yourself in public," he did not listen to those voices. He was playful, and he heeded the call of finding his own way.
Oui, l'autre aspect de son implication et de ses valeurs professionnelles, c'est le fait de prendre des risques, d'assumer, de quoi qu'il arrive, avancer sur son chemin, conserver la fraîcheur, l'innovation. Donc il était curieux d'explorer des nouveaux chemins et il n'écoutait jamais les voix qui lui disaient ça va être impossible, tu n'y arriveras pas. Et il fait partie de ces musiciens qui disaient ok, voyons où ça nous mène et ensuite on avisera.
Another one of Duke Ellington's values as a leader was trust.
La confiance.
Which shows up in his creative collaborations. If musicians are to have a successful collaboration, one requirement must be there, if not at the outset, very early on. The partners must establish trust between and among themselves. Trust and confidence are synonyms, but there's a difference between the two. In English, confidence is a belief in a positive outcome. Trust is how you regard another person at the gut or emotional level. It means dismissing doubts about the other person. You may have doubts, but to establish trust, you must consciously dismiss them and be willing to take a risk.
La confiance dont parle John, en fait, on pourrait aller jusqu'à la notion de foi dans soi, même foi dans l'autre. C'est pas, it's not faith, but it's very close to faith. Trust, I would say, en français en tout cas. Donc, on est au-delà de la confiance en soi, confiance dans les autres, et s'abandonner dans l'autre.
And last value I'd like to mention is how he valued great talent in musicians that he would hire. He would seek them out, he would hire them, he would inspire them. If you compared, for example, the leadership styles of Benny Goodman with Duke Ellington.
Alors ici, maintenant, le dernier aspect, ça concerne les talents. Comment est-ce qu'on recrute des talents? Comment est-ce qu'on nourrit les talents? Comment on fait exprimer les talents autour de soi? Et John, je ne traduirai pas, va comparer les deux grands chefs d'orchestre qui étaient en compétition dans les années 40, Duke Ellington et Benny Goodman.
In general, Duke Ellington treated his players as if they were rare flowers that needed sunshine, love, and watering. Benny Goodman was the opposite, a strict taskmaster. And if you misbehaved or disappointed him, you might be the victim of his infamous glare known as the ray. You did not want to get the ray. Singer Helen Forrest said she left the band, quote, in order to avoid a nervous breakdown.
Je veux dire, donc il dit que Ellington était plutôt un jardinier qui prenait soin de toutes les fleurs de son orchestre, là où Benny Goodman était plutôt un contremaître. Et les dépressions nerveuses dans son orchestre étaient légendaires, ainsi que le turnover dans son orchestre.
Benny Goodman was a strict disciplinarian, Duke Ellington was a tolerant leader. Henny Goodman demanded high musicianship. Ellington inspired it.
Henny Goodman demandait à ses musiciens de faire preuve de musicalité. Ellington inspirait les musiciens pour qu'ils fassent preuve de musicalité.
Goodman ruled his band by a kind of fear because you did not want to get the ray. It was withering. Ellington ruled by inspiration.
La peur chez Goodman, l'inspiration chez Ellington.
Goodman monopolized most of the solos. Ellington gave away the solo space to his players.
Goodman joue presque tous les solos de son orchestre lui-même à la clarinette. Ellington en joue presque aucun et donne les solos à ses musiciens.
Goodman's band suffered legendary turnover. The average tenure was 1, maybe 2 years. Duke Ellington's band enjoyed legendary longevity. Some players were with him for 50 years.
Turnover chez Goodman, la grande stabilité chez l'orchestre. Gardez en tête que Harry Carney est resté 47 ans dans l'orchestre d'Ellington.
Goodman kept his band together for 15 years. Ellington for more than 3 times as long, 50 years.
L'orchestre de Goodman a duré 15 ans, l'orchestre d'Ellington 50 ans. So I suppose that there are values that are good for business too.
As a matter of fact, when I give this talk to business organizations or nonprofits, after I give this contrast between Goodman and Ellington, I say, which kind of leader would you rather work for? And which kind of leader would you rather be?
Voilà, donc la question c'est que même dans le business, on peut choisir entre le modèle de Goodman ou celui d'Ellington, mais celui d'Ellington est quand même plus profitable, donc ça vaut le coup d'y penser.
And just as a PS, earlier Laurent and I were talking about the fact, relatively little known, that Duke Ellington was a Mason, a member of Freemasonry.
Ellington était franc-maçon, on le sait, but how deep?
Maybe in 2 words.
Oh, 2 words, that's what we expected to say, just 2 words. Do we know so much about it?
No.
But we know a few about it. We know a few about it. Oui, ce qu'on peut dire quand même sur la franc-maçonnerie, c'est que la franc-maçonnerie, en fait, elle prêche, elle supporte pratiquement toutes les valeurs des Lumières. The values of the Enlightenment are in the Freemasonry, with an exception, which is not really an exception, that the belief in God is as the appreciation of each one. Chacun peut croire ou ne pas croire, and nothing is forced on this way. So Ellington was very close, if we would have time, we could talk about it, était très proche des valeurs de la maçonnerie, et ça n'est pas une surprise que d'apprendre que Ellington était franc-maçon. It's not a surprise to know that he was Mason. But it's the masonry, the US masonry, and not the European one, which is quite different again. So, well, we need time, so let's jump to the following.
Thank you, gentlemen. I realize that translating every words in the 2 languages, we should have 6 days to do all the things we have to share with you. Now it's time for me to welcome Marylin Lester. She's a writer and a reviewer of jazz, cabaret, and popular music and theater. She's on the boards, actually, you can see it on screen, of the American Popular Song Society and the Tin Pan Alley American Popular Music Project. She's also an expert on Duke Ellington, and she's very active in the international Ellington community. She was on the board of the New York Duke Ellington Society and editor of the Duke Ellington Society newsletter until 2 years ago when it stopped. And she was also formerly the executive director of the Duke Ellington Center of the Arts. I know that she's hoping for an international Duke Ellington Society of the world and the universe. So, dear Marylin, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, is this on? Can you hear me?
No.
Okay, so in what I do, as explained, I deal a lot with legacy of other performers. I know through ASCAP, the legacy, ASCAP has a legacy department and a lot of the people, a lot of legacy. And what we're facing now is a crisis of the Duke Ellington legacy, and that is I originally had thought, well, an international Duke Ellington society. I've expanded my thinking since then because I'm realizing that the legacy of Duke Ellington is in crisis, and that is really what I want to speak of. Do you want to translate or?
Well, just a few. Marylin pense, and we talked about it back to our meeting in Amsterdam a few years ago. That we had to think about. Donc elle dit qu'il y a une sorte de baisse de l'intérêt sur et des droits d'auteur d'ailleurs aussi d'Ellington sur Alaska qui est la SACEM américaine, et que donc là maintenant il faudrait sans doute se mobiliser pour rendre un peu plus vivace cet héritage.
Now, why are we here? Because we know that Duke Ellington is a genius, a legend, an icon, and as John said, he has in the afterlife, the mansion on the hill. And what are we going to do about it? When the societies were formed, were mostly from the societies. Now, 2 years ago, the New York Society collapsed. It was a tragedy. And that was because one man, Ray Carmen, bore the responsibility of keeping the society alive. He was the president for 20 years, and then he passed away. And no one was willing to take on the burden of running the society.
Il y a 2 ans, la Duke Ellington Society de New York s'est arrêtée, simplement parce que son président, qui l'a dirigé depuis 20 ans, est mort et il n'y a personne pour en prendre.
The Washington Society had collapsed a few years before that.
Et avant, c'était celle de Washington.
The societies were born in the 1950s when Duke was alive and many of the musicians were alive, and particularly New York would thrive on interaction with them, and they began to die off. Duke died, the musicians died off, and now take a look at us. We're not getting younger.
Ouais, les sociétés, les Duke Ellington Societies un peu partout dans le monde sont nées dans les années 50, où à la période où Duke était encore vivant, les musiciens aussi, et le temps passe, et les gens meurent les uns après les autres, et on arrive à une extrémité qui n'est pas très réjouissante.
What's left? We have Toronto. I'm not sure how well they're doing, but Toronto exists.
Toronto existe toujours.
And
We're here.
Fantastic. We have LA is in name only, I think, at this point.
Los Angeles est là.
And this is wonderful, but the strength is not what it used to be. Now it's here in Europe, we have the UK, Sweden, and the Maison du Duc.
L'Angleterre, bien sûr, la Suède, la Maison du Duc à Paris.
But again, the strength is diminished. So what can we expect in the future? I don't think we can expect that anything's going to improve, and it's only going to diminish because young people are not attracted to this kind of society anymore. They're very far removed from what many of you know were the people who actually were in the band and who did the work, did the work of working with Duke. This is all a diminishing prospect. So then we have the legacy of Duke through the family. And the family has let down Duke. It's a tragedy. Duke, as you know, had one son, Mercer. Mercer had 4 children. The 4 children are alive. Mercedes is the oldest, she's 83. Then we have Gail and Edward, who are in their late 70s. And then we have a big gap, and then we have the executor of the estate, and that is Paul, who's now 45, 46. And none of them have been successful in doing anything about the legacy of Duke. Mercedes' organization could have been more, but it didn't happen that way. So that is a failure in terms of Duke. You look at the website, and it is a disaster. It was never maintained. It was Paul never had the interest. The lawyers were running everything, and the website is unchanged for about a dozen years.
Bon, alors maintenant on arrive au sujet qui fâche, c'est la famille. On pourrait se dire que la famille, les descendants et les ayants droit d'Ellington feraient tous leurs efforts pour protéger le patrimoine, mais ils ne le font pas, et c'est là où est la plus grande déception. Mercer Ellington avait donc quatre enfants, et aucun des 4 enfants ne fait le boulot. Mercedes en fait une partie, mais ça ne va pas très très loin. Paul est un exécuteur, un légataire du droit moral, et il ne fait rien de tout, il n'est pas très intéressé par tout ça, et tout s'effondre gentiment, et même la famille ne soutient rien du tout.
In contrast, there are legacies of other musicians and other performers. I also deal with the American Songbook. There are great legacies in the websites and the foundations of performers such as Ella Fitzgerald, Oscar Peterson, Thelonious Monk, and many others. And in terms of the bands, the Count Basie band is hot. They tour. They're going to be in New York this month in Birdland. The Mingus Big Band is swinging, and the Ellington Band is in shatters. It's in pieces. It doesn't perform hardly. And I think you saw them a few years ago, I believe. Yes, the Ellington Band, and they were not sharp. They were not. So there's another point at which the Ellington is, the great Duke Ellington, it has been let down. So we come to the point, what do we do about it?
Même l'orchestre officiel est une catastrophe. Alors, le Count Basie orchestral est monstrueux, l'orchestre de Mingus, le Mingus orchestral est terrible, mais l'orchestre officiel américain porté par la famille est l'ombre de lui-même.
So there is the notion, and this was floated 30 years ago by Morris Hidara, who is a legend in the New York Society. Many of you knew Morris. Yes. That we have an international society, but what does that take? Who of us has the energy here to establish that, run it, run a website, keep it current, keep it active? That is a problem. We speak of it, but we don't do anything. And I know for myself, I would love to participate, but I could not bear the burden of the entire proposition. None of us could. So we'd have to work together on that. But I think there might be another solution, and that is, think of the Louis Armstrong estate. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it.
Il y aurait une solution qui peut-être serait de s'inspirer de ce qui a été fait du côté de Louis Armstrong.
The Louis Armstrong estate is magnificently strong. There is in New York, in Queens, the Louis Armstrong house where he lived. It is now a museum. It is now a source of inspiration. It has archives, and it is associated with Queens College in New York. And it's probably the best example I can think of how a legend's estate and legacy has been managed. Now, what would that mean for us? There are two options, I think. One is sort of kind of aligned with the notion of the International Society, and that is we would have to establish our own foundation, a not-for-profit, in which we would hire, this would take money, but we would hire a management team, we would hire a board of directors, we would hire people to manage it and take care of it.
L'idée de Marylin serait en fait d'aller un peu dans la direction de ce qui a été fait pour Louis Armstrong, c'est-à-dire que les exécuteurs testamentaires et qui sont en charge de développer cette affaire ont une maison, la maison Louis Armstrong, dans laquelle il y a un musée qui est associé d'ailleurs à un collège et qui rayonne énormément. Et donc elle a dans l'idée peut-être de créer une fondation qui a besoin bien sûr d'argent, et qui engagerait des gens pour la diriger, pour travailler au quotidien, pour faire tout ce travail. Ça passerait par la proposition de Marylin et de passer par une fondation.
The other option is to have an alliance, as does the Louis Armstrong estate, with an entity that is strong, a college, a university, something like that. I don't think the Smithsonian is appropriate, because that's not the mission of the Smithsonian. When the New York Society collapsed, we gave our archive, tapes of the meetings and so forth, to the Schomburg Center in New York. They have a record for study by people who want to know about what happened at our meetings. We gave our finances to the Jazz Museum in Harlem, and we have been trying to work with them since and to continue the legacy of the New York Society and of Duke, and it has been a miserable failure so far. And if Lauren Schoenberg was here, I would, say to him, speak to us about that. I have not been able to work with them. I've been very, very blank about it. Jazz at Lincoln Center is not the place for us because even though Wynton Marsalis built it on what he calls the Ellington legacy, and there's the essentially Ellington high school band competition every year, they are very to themselves. They have never worked with us. When I was with Mercedes, they never worked with us, and they had no interest in it.
Donc l'idée après la deuxième option, ça serait de s'associer avec des institutions. C'est pas trop possible avec le statut du Smithsonian qu'a représenté à une époque John. Le Lincoln Center avec le département jazz conduit par Wynton Marsalis n'a jamais voulu travailler avec la Duke Ellington Society de New York, et là encore ça ressemble un peu à une impasse.
So where does this leave us? Now my latest thought about this is perhaps Rutgers University in New Jersey has a very strong jazz department. I think it might be, I don't know. I would like input. We might approach them to take us on in the way Queens College took on Louis Armstrong. But to sum up, I don't know where our direction goes. I just know we need a direction. We need to ensure that the legacy of the great Duke Ellington, this amazing human being, which is why we are here, is not being served. And how do we do that? Those are my thoughts. I wish I had a solution.
Marylin n'a pas de solution, elle vient pour poser des questions, pas pour poser des solutions. Elle invite chacun à réfléchir, à partager, à échanger pour trouver une solution pour fixer tout ce patrimoine qui pour l'instant est en train de disparaître progressivement comme neige au soleil. Ça c'est moi, neige au soleil, il n'a pas dit, mais c'est pour faire genre. So you are inviting everybody to talk, to exchange, to find solutions all together, and to because we don't have solution for today.
We and Laurent has talked about it. I've talked about it, and still we sit without a solution. So I think we need to get serious because, as I say, none of us are getting younger.
For the contribution to the debate, I would say that the material aspect of Duke, I mean the music sheet and all the stuff, material aspect, is a point, and the immaterial aspect is another point. And the world is changing today. We are going into the internet, we are opening the metaverse, and the world is changing. And perhaps we should relate our goal to the new world which is coming and to the new way of perhaps going to the conservation aspect. Perhaps we must think differently because our old world is finishing. We will pass in a few days, all of us, but we must think for something for the future in the new way of thinking.
I agree, and I see that getting the work I do. One small example is musicians continue to put out CDs and nobody buys them because nobody is listening to CDs. We're all MP3s. We're all streaming. But there's still a need from musicians to have something that they can have in their hand and say, I did a CD, but not the same.
Or I write a book. This man writes books, still writes books.
Oui.
Bon. Ok, on a vu ça. D'accord. Très bien.
Yes, I have a question.
Thank you very much. So,
Have you reached out to any HBCUs, historically black universities? Like, for example, in Washington, D.C., they have a large jazz department. So I've heard you mention the schools, but I haven't heard any HBCUs because a lot of them do not know that you're here. They don't even know. And it's not that they're interested, but somehow you've got to reach the people because, Duke Ellington is a black man and there's a lot of musicians that would like to participate. So my question is, have you reached out to any HBCUs?
the question is?
Have you reached
Can you
out to
say-
any historically black universities
No.
in terms of carrying on this legacy of Duke Ellington?
Yeah.
Howard.
Howard in
We
Washington.
don't hear you very much, in fact. Could you speak louder? please?
Okay.
C'est quoi la question?
Have you reached out to any historically black universities such as Howard University in Washington, D.C.?
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
That's another way, that's another, you know.
Yeah, it's a lead. It's a lead. Yeah, it's a possibility. Sure. We would like to maybe exchange later, because I think this morning we were supposed to take questions from the audience for 15 minutes after each presentation, but we are so late, you know, and translating in French is taking a lot of time. So I'm really sorry, but I hope we can exchange more later. And I would like to thank everybody here. Thank you for listening. We are keeping the schedule this afternoon. I'm going to start at 2:15 myself, so it's going to be a short break.